So, in order to personally develop my own style, I decided to look at Matt Groening's style of drawing by focusing specifically on The Simpsons. Personally, I just found this section of work to be really entertaining for me because I've always loved The Simpsons, I've always watched it as a kid, and I still watch it now. So, being able to draw some of my favourite characters, specifically Otto and Lisa, it just sped up the process for me because I was really enjoying what I was drawing. So, the first 5 drawings that are on the first page are of Homer, and they are from one specific episode that was a parody of a film called Boyhood, which is a sort of mockumentary style film where they literally film a boy growing up and you see him grow up before your very eyes. And so obviously The Simpsons, as they often reference pop culture, they obviously parodied that by having Homer as a baby and then progressing him into an adult. So whilst watching this episode, I paused specific parts that I thought were quite humorous or quite stereotypical. So I paused at the section in which he is a baby because I just felt that it was really stereotypical in the way that he'd been represented. So, for example, he has a really small head, he has absolutely massive eyes, and then just 2 little tufts of hair. And I feel that a lot of children, specifically babies in cartoons, are represented to have like only 1 or 2 strands of hair just to show their age. And then I also decided to draw the particular one where he is a small boy, where he's eating his own bib, and I just thought it was very humorous in the way that it had been depicted. And it's also quite disturbing in a way because it sort of hints at the problems with obesity that Homer continually has into adulthood. And then in that respect, it also foreshadows the next drawing, which is of him as a very obese pre-teenager, because you can see he's almost doubled in size. He's got man boobs. So that's also quite a humorous representation of obesity, which is still disturbing because it is a horrific issue, especially in America. So I also felt that I needed to draw this specific frame because it highlights a stereotype of Americans that is worldwide. And then lastly, I decided to draw this frame of him as a teenager, and I just thought it was really humorous in the way that they'd executed it because he has slightly shut eyelids, which shows that he's stressed, and then he has a slight frown, again showing the whole bad attitude that's associated with teenagers. And then of course he also has bad acne. So I feel that in conclusion, with drawing this progress from childhood to adolescence, it just helped me get my head around character development and how different age groups are represented. Although I didn't do my children's show, it was somewhat integral for me to have drawn those characters for my initial idea of my outcome, my children's show, because it just allowed me to look at stereotypes and see how they are represented within media, especially children's media. And then with my finalised outcome, I feel that it definitely helped with my personal drawing style, because I do tend to use quite wide circular eyes with a lot of my characters. So I feel that matte graining style has definitely inspired me that way. And then also I feel that the whole process of showing baby Homer into adolescent Homer is definitely something that relates to my finalised outcome, because I've drawn serial killers as adults but then also as children. And I just feel that seeing the stylistic progression from childhood into adolescence has allowed me to look at my initial adult drawings of the serial killers and then think, what features could I incorporate into the child version of them so that you could still tell it was the same person. And then next, I decided to draw some of my favourite characters, just to, for the sake of time, essentially, because I wanted to make sure that I was able to experiment with other cartoon styles. And so I felt that if I was drawing something that I was really interested and passionate about, it would speed up the process, which it did, definitely. And so with my choice of these characters, it was looking at how they are represented in a very stereotypical way, because there's so many stereotypes within The Simpsons. So I focused on a specific episode in which Lisa goes through a goth phase, which I just find really humorous, because I used to be quite goth, so I just found that a lot of the minor details that they'd incorporated within Lisa's appearance as a goth, I found that a lot of them were very similar to the way in which I used to dress. And then I was also looking at Cletus, who is a very stereotypical hillbilly. And even though a lot of his behaviours and characteristics and the plot lines within the episodes show that he's a stereotypical hillbilly, there's also physical attributes that hint that he is a hillbilly. So, for example, he's got this really poorly designed snake tattoo on his arm, he's got really buck teeth, he's got a really long neck. And I just feel that although the plot lines within The Simpsons are quite integral to showing the humorous sides of the stereotypes within them, they also need to have physical characteristics that show certain parts of their stereotypes, just to further increase that humorous aspect. And then again with Otto, I just felt that it was quite humorous because he's a very stereotypical rocker, which is something that I really relate to, as I've been one since I was probably about 12. So he has bracelets, he's got a lighter, he's always singing, he's always on about Metallica. He always uses slang like dude and man. And then finally I looked at Apu, who was probably like one of the most controversial characters within The Simpsons because of the uproar that's occurred mainly on the internet. So obviously Apu is Hindu and he has a really thick Indian accent, and then he's had an arranged marriage, and he owns a corner shop. You know, it's just all of those really stereotypical things of a Southern Asian person. And I'd only recently found out from research into stereotypes within The Simpsons, I found out that Apu is actually voiced by a white actor, which was quite strange, but then at the same time, it was sort of, well, The Simpsons has so many stereotypes that can be seen as offensive, and I wasn't exactly sure why everyone was just focusing on Apu, because there's Willie, who is the Scottish janitor, who is stereotyped to be really violent and quite dumb, but nobody seems anywhere near as bothered about that as they are with Apu. So I've decided to include a snippet from an article that I'd found about Apu, and then as well as a picture of the artwork for a short documentary about the problem with having a racial stereotype within The Simpsons. And I just felt like the whole research process of me finding out that people can be so flustered and offended by cartoons and stereotypes within cartoons, it just sort of made me even more motivated to make a piece that was even more controversial, because I've always really liked playing around with the idea of taking something offensive and then twisting it even more so, and just essentially causing... I just find controversial art quite interesting, because the whole reason behind why something is offensive is interesting to me just in itself, because basically as a society we've constructed these things that are deemed as offensive just because other people say so, and I just find that really interesting. And so the whole controversial aspect behind the character of Apu has just continually motivated me to create something that's controversial, that's presented in a childlike and cartoon way.